A man has been shot in the stomach by a Singapore police officer during a raid on a cheating syndicate in Balestier. The 36-year-old is in stable condition. Now, he's one of 7 suspects arrested for cheating offences. Deborah Wong joins us from outside of the condominium where the incident took place. Now, Deborah, this is very rare in Singapore. What actually happened?
Well, Telly, I'm actually standing at a very quiet stretch of the road. In fact, this is the end of the road. I'm standing right in front of City Suites condominium. It's very hard to imagine, given the stillness of this road, that a man was shot in one of the units just right behind me at 1 a.m. this morning. Now, we arrived at about 5 p.m. after being alerted by the police, and when we arrived, there were police vehicles stationed in the compound. It's a private property, so we were not allowed to go in. But here's what we know. At about 1 a.m. Last night, police were actually conducting a crackdown on alleged scammers. So 3 plainclothes officers entered a unit where they were met by 4 suspects. They identified themselves as police officers, and at this point, one suspect lunged towards a police officer, and he fell and he hurt his head, so he was bleeding from his head. And at this point, a second police officer warned him to stop hitting his colleague, but he didn't listen. So around the same time, a second suspect approached the injured officer, and the second police officer drew his firearm as a precaution. At this point, the first suspect that tackled the officer to the ground tried to snatch the gun away from him. So a struggle ensued, and the police officer shot him in the stomach, but the brawl continued. So the 2 suspects were eventually subdued when backup officers arrived at the scene. So earlier, during the press conference by the police, they said that the officers are trained to handle such situations and react swiftly according to dynamic situations. Now, in this case, they assessed that there was imminent danger, and so they reacted accordingly. Now, what we also know is that the incidence of discharge of firearms is actually a very rare occurrence, in Singapore, like you mentioned earlier. And in the last time this happened was in 2015, when police chased down drug suspects near where high-level defense summits were taking place.
Yeah, Deborah, tell us a bit more about how reaction has been to this. As you mentioned, it is quite a rare occurrence in Singapore for firearms to be used. So what have the locals been saying?
Well, Steve, this is actually still a very quiet area. In fact, just beside me, there are a pool of reporters here. We've been approaching residents and approaching shop owners in the vicinity, trying to find out if they heard or see anything. But people say they have not heard or seen anything. But what is interesting is that the only hint that anything that was out of the ordinary was police cars still parked in this area presumably from late last night all the way to this evening, and they only exited this area at about 6:30 earlier. So that's the only indication that anything strange was happening. But then again, residents did tell us that it's actually not very uncommon to see police patrolling the streets because of crackdown on several vice activities. Just to give you an idea of where we are, just a few steps away from this condominium towards the main road, there are a string of budget hotels. We're also located very close to a historical Chinese temple that's famous for its opera performances. And next to it is a famous durian stall that has crowds hanging around here till late at night. So I spoke to the durian stall owner earlier, and here's what she had to say.
If let's say this happened in the morning, afternoon area, of course that's a bit of scary, Our safety are all concerned, customers and everything here. Last time we closed around 10 o'clock. So recently the crowds here are not many because I think due to COVID, not many people came out in the night lately. So over here in the night time it's quite quiet.
Many thanks for that report, Deborah Wong, reporting from outside the condo where the shooting took place.